Many people in Britain still reach for the same tea bags they grew up with, assuming nothing important has changed. Supermarkets know that habit runs deep, yet blend sourcing and even leaf grades shift over time. You pay for a trusted name and end up with a cup that is weaker, harsher, or oddly dusty on the tongue. Taste is not the only issue. When tea turns thin or bitter, many people add more bags, more sugar, or more cups in a day. Health advisors already warn about heavy caffeine tannins and excess sugar, especially for older hearts, blood pressure, and sleep. A disappointing brew can quietly push those numbers in the wrong direction, one refill at a time. You deserve better than that from an everyday box. 7 well-known UK teas underperformed in blind tasting consistency or value, while only 2 stood up to closer scrutiny. If any of these sit in your cupboard, stay with me. A few small switches could protect both your taste and your long-term health. Number 1. Twinings Everyday. Some teas look dependable until you brew them. That quiet confidence is what keeps Twinings everyday in many cupboards, yet the blend no longer performs at the level people assume it does. The main concern starts with strength. The cup often settles into a thin, slightly sharp profile that does not match the promise printed on the box. Many long-term drinkers expect a steady body for milk and a clear backbone for a morning routine, but the flavour frequently lands lighter than anticipated. It is not an issue of danger or safety, it is simply a question of reliability, and this blend struggles to hold its place in that role. A clearer picture appeared during a blind taste test reviewed by Which in August 2024, where Twinings Everyday landed at the lower end of the rankings among widely sold teas. The panel behind that review included 79 testers, making the result a reasonably grounded snapshot rather than an isolated opinion. By comparison, several cheaper supermarket blends outperformed it, which raises a basic question of value rather than loyalty. On the surface, the tea looks fine. The bag brews quickly, and the colour forms evenly at first contact with water. From that point though, the cup often settles into a mid-brown shade that suggests depth, but does not always follow through. The aroma is modest, and the brew plateaus sooner than many expect, even after a longer steep. The practical impact is simple. A weaker cup leads many people to add extra bags or extend the steeping time. That small adjustment may seem harmless, but repeated over weeks, it pushes caffeine and tannin intake upward without delivering better flavour. Older drinkers managing sleep, blood pressure, or stomach sensitivity often find themselves compensating for a tea that should have held its strength without additional steps. The price gap adds another layer. Twinings presents itself as a steady premium option, yet its performance in comparative testing suggests a mismatch between branding and the experience in the cup. When a blend with a higher price trails behind budget lines that cost noticeably less, the value equation turns difficult to justify. This does not mean the tea is flawed beyond use. It simply means expectations need recalibration. For viewers who want a stronger morning base or a tea that holds its flavour cleanly through milk, this blend no longer sits in the dependable bracket many assume it occupies. Twinings Everyday still carries the weight of a familiar name, but names do not brew your cup, results do. And in recent testing and day-to-day brewing, the results have fallen short of what most people expect from a box positioned as a reliable standard. Number 2. Tesco Original. Tesco Original scored 67% in the August 2024, which blind test placing it at the lower end of the group. That result surprised many regular buyers who assumed the blend still held the same strength it offered years ago. The bag colours well at first contact with water, yet the cup often settles into a flat brown tone that suggests depth but rarely delivers it. Under normal brewing, the flavour slips into a muted profile, pushing people to reach for an extra bag or leave the cup steeping longer than usual. What begins as a small adjustment turns into a routine without anyone noticing. The health effect of that pattern is simple. When a tea lacks body, people often compensate with more sugar, more cups, or both. Each change carries a quiet cost. More sugar raises the daily load on blood pressure and weight control. Extra cups add caffeine and tannins that can unsettle sleep, irritate the stomach, or tighten the chest in sensitive drinkers. UK GP Dr. Sarah Jarvis has often reminded patients that small daily increases in caffeine and sugar matter more than people think, and this is the exact type of situation she means. The issue is not the tea itself, but the behaviour it encourages when it fails to satisfy on its own. As the body responds, these habits settle in. Evening rest becomes lighter. Blood pressure ebbs and rises more than it should. Stomach lining feels tender after several weeks of heavy steeping. None of this appears in a dramatic moment. It arrives through repetition. A weak brew quietly invites the kind of intake that older drinkers are often advised to moderate. Picture a man in his late 50s coming home after work. He makes a cup with Tesco Original, finds it dull and adds a second bag. An hour later, he feels half satisfied and prepares another. The day ends with 4 or 5 cups each, slightly stronger or sweeter than planned. The next morning brings rough sleep, a dry mouth, and a tight feeling behind the eyes. He blames stress, not the adjustments he made to chase a flavour that never quite arrived. The blend is not harmful. It is simply too mild to hold its place as a reliable daily tea. When a cup forces people to work harder for taste, the long-term pattern becomes the real concern. Tesco Original has the name, the history, and the placement on every shelf, but the cup it delivers pushes drinkers toward habits that do not serve them well. A brew should settle the day, not complicate it. When a tea no longer provides that stability, it is worth reconsidering the box you trust to start and steady your routine. Number 3. Morrison's Everyday Tea. Tesco's decline has been clear to many shoppers, but the more revealing story is how Morrison's followed a similar arc. Years ago, Morrison's carried a quiet reputation for reliability. The everyday blend was simple, friendly, and steady enough for people who wanted a straightforward cuppa without thinking about leaf grades or brewing times. It held its strength, worked reliably with milk, and had the kind of unforced balance that fit into busy routines. That was the period when many households saw it as the honest middle ground, not premium, not budget, just a dependable choice that brewed the same way day after day. That picture has shifted. Morrison scored 68% in the August 2024, which blind test landing only a single point above Tesco Original. The result suggests not just a slip in flavour, but a retreat from the steadiness shoppers once associated with the brand. The difference between past and present is not dramatic, but it is persistent. What used to feel consistent now feels variable, and that is often more frustrating than outright weakness. Online feedback reflects this change. A decade ago, comments often described Morrison's tea as surprisingly solid, good value, or simply fine for daily drinking. More recent remarks tell another story, cups described as thin, hit and miss, or weak unless doubled up. Review patterns across several supermarket platforms repeat the same points: uneven strength, fast fade after the first minute, and a loss of the depth that once made the blend feel friendly and familiar. These are not emotional complaints. They are practical notes from people trying to maintain a routine that no longer behaves as it used to. The visual shift echoes this. After several tries, the brew colours quickly, but settles into a flat mid-brown that hints at substance without giving much of it. Across different kettles and brewing habits, the pattern remains: the tea looks promising for a few seconds, then slips into a muted profile that lacks the body needed for milk. Through ordinary days, drinkers find themselves adjusting, compensating, or repeating cups, building new habits that never used to be necessary. A clinical view explains why the decline matters. When tea weakens, people compensate. Extra bags concentrate caffeine and tannins. Extra cups add to total intake. Extra sugar becomes a near-automatic fix for thin flavour. UK GP Dr. Sarah Jarvis has often warned that repeated small increases in caffeine and sugar can change sleep and blood pressure before people notice, and this situation reflects that pattern closely. What used to be a reliable one-bag routine turns into 2 or 3, and the body absorbs the shift long before the drinker thinks about it. The deeper irony is harder to dismiss. Morrison's built loyalty on being approachable, steady, and straightforward. As blends changed and adjustments crept in, the tea drifted away from that character. It is the same movement seen in many everyday goods. the more a product is refined, standardized, or altered to fit cost pressures, the further it can move from the qualities that earn trust in the first place. The question now lingers: is this slide a temporary phase that brands will correct, or is it becoming the direction of many familiar products, a slow step away from the reliability people once took for granted? Number 4. Sainsbury's Red Label. Across recent supermarket surveys, Sainsbury's Red Label often sits in the lower tier for strength and consistency. The numbers mirror that trend. Sainsbury's Red Label scored 69% in the August 2024, which blind test placing it behind several competitors that were once considered its equals. The score does not shock anyone who has followed how this blend has shifted over the last few years. What used to feel steady now behaves like a product stretched a bit too far across too many batches. Within its price tier, the main issue is formulation drift. As supermarkets widen their sourcing pools to keep costs predictable, the blend built on a broader range of leaf grades than before. Larger pools mean more variability. Faster blending cycles reduce the time needed to stabilize the flavor. High turnover pushes production to prioritize volume over depth. None of these changes appear dramatic on their own, but together they weaken the cup in ways many shoppers notice immediately. As reactions accumulate, online feedback forms a consistent pattern. Some drinkers mention color rising quickly, but flavor collapsing just as fast. Others say the tea requires longer brewing to reach its old strength, only to lose body the moment milk is added. A number of comments point to box-to-box inconsistency, describing one purchase as fine and the next as barely there. These are calm observations, not emotional complaints. They show how a mid-tier blend can slip simply because its inputs no longer behave the same way. An insider remark from trade reporting captures the core problem: wider leaf pools can cause sharp differences between batches, noted a sourcing specialist. That single sentence explains why a product once considered reliable now feels unpredictable. Stability depends on a narrow input range. When the range widens, small shifts in leaf size, moisture, or oxidation levels show up directly in the cup. Once brewed, the sensory picture confirms what the data and feedback suggest. The tea rises to a flat mid-brown that looks acceptable at first glance. The aroma is muted, carrying little of the rounded edge expected from a classic British everyday blend. The taste holds for a moment before thinning quickly, especially when paired with milk. The cup feels short-lived, as if the flavour has a limited window before fading into something mild and forgettable. Across multiple batches, the result is the same: a tea that seems to promise more than it delivers. The issue is not that Sainsbury's Red Label is poor, it is that it no longer sits where shoppers assume it should. The blend has gradually moved away from its earlier balance, shaped by sourcing choices and production rhythms that prioritize supply stability over sensory stability. The final picture is straightforward. When a mid-tier blend stretches its formulation to cover wider supply variations, some part of its identity slips. Sainsbury's Red Label reflects that shift clearly, not through dramatic failure, but through a steady decline in strength, consistency, and character. Number 5. Aldi's Diplomat Red Label. A shopper grabs a familiar red box on a busy weekday, guided by the idea that a budget blend should still deliver a straightforward cup. Aldi's Diplomat Red Label has long leaned on that expectation, offering bright packaging and a promise of value without drawing attention to how it is made. Once you look closer, the process reveals why the tea often lands lighter than hoped. Large-scale production relies on speed. Leaves are milled, quickly sorted with emphasis on uniformity, and moved on before they have time to rest. Blending schedules are built around throughput rather than flavour development. The cycles are tight, the batches large, and the priority fixed on keeping the shelves full. In that environment, compromises are not accidents but structural choices. Behind the scenes, the blend reflects those choices. Dust grades travel through the system faster, cost less, and absorb flavour quickly enough to pass basic checks. Bulk sourcing helps maintain a predictable price, but it limits the room for careful selection. Packaging focuses on efficiency over protection, trading robustness for lower costs. Through the supply chain, every step tilts toward consistency in supply rather than depth in the cup. The motives are practical. Aldi competes on price, and a tea that moves through the factory quickly helps hold that line. Retailers track margins to the penny, and a product like Diplomat Red Label proves its worth only if it stays predictable in cost and quantity. A former UK tea buyer once said in trade reporting that supermarket blends are designed for scale, first a description that fits this tea squarely. None of this is hidden. It is simply how large volume blends work. The cup shows the outcome. Once brewed, the colour rises fast and settles into a mid-brown shade that looks promising but often stops short of real body. The aroma is faint and the taste leans thin, especially with milk. Moving through the checklist, the brew feels straightforward but not anchored, the kind of cup that fills a moment but rarely satisfies it. As many notice, the second sip brings the same impression as the first, functional, mild and gone almost as soon as it arrives. The numbers point in the same direction. Diplomat Red Label scored 70% in the August 2024, which blind test landing behind stronger, more rounded supermarket blends. The score reflects not a flaw, but the natural outcome of a process, built to meet volume and cost expectations ahead of flavour. The reflection that follows touches more than one brand. When a system prioritises pace over patience, the products shaped by it lose the qualities that once made them distinct. Tea depends on time, time for leaves to rest, time for blends to settle, time for flavour to develop. When those windows narrow, the cup narrows with them. The result is not failure, but a slow drift from what a simple tea is meant to be. And if this is what happens at a moderate level of scale, the next brand in line shows how the pattern deepens when the system tightens further. Number 6. Waitrose Essential Original Blend. Waitrose Essential Original Blend scored 70% in the August 2024, which blind test a result that sits in the middle of the field despite its higher price and tidy presentation. For many shoppers, that number does not match the image they associate with the brand. Waitrose often carries an assumption of quiet superiority, better sourcing, better balance, better attention to detail. The Essential line reinforces that idea by positioning itself as the reliable, slightly polished, everyday choice. That expectation shapes the first impression long before anyone boils the kettle. Set against those expectations, the blend does not hold the distance people anticipate. The issue begins with how mid-tier supermarket teas build their identity. Price, packaging and shelf placement work together to imply a higher standard, but the leaf quality and blending process often land closer to the lower-cost competitors than customers realise. Within common shopping patterns, many people pay the extra amount, assuming they will get a stronger or fuller brew. When the cup turns out to be ordinary, the disappointment feels sharper because it contradicts the brand's reputation. An industry voice captured this pattern clearly. A former UK grocery category planner noted in trade coverage that shoppers pay for placement more than content, a remark that sits uncomfortably well with how this blend performs. The product benefits from trust built over years, but trust does not adjust the taste inside the cup. The shelf does some of the work long before the tea does. Online reactions make the picture clearer. Across several platforms, broad comments appear again and again, cups described as weaker than expected, remarks about paying more without getting more, and notes about the tea lacking the depth many assume comes with a Waitrose label. These reactions are not emotional. They are practical summaries from people trying to reconcile the price with the outcome. Through simple tasting, the experience is straightforward. The tea colours evenly but stops at a gentle mid-brown that suggests warmth more than strength. The aroma is modest, and the flavour leans light, especially with milk. The profile is not unpleasant. It is simply unremarkable. As comparisons build, the blend settles into the same general zone as several cheaper supermarket teas, offering a serviceable cup, but not the firmer, fuller profile the branding implies. The irony rests in the quiet gap between presentation and performance. When a product signals higher quality through design, tone, and retail environment, the cup must follow through. Here, the difference is wide enough for drinkers to notice without needing any special palate. That contrast weakens the value proposition, turning the higher price into a question rather than a justification. Across the middle tier of British tea, this pattern appears more often than people expect. The confidence that branding provides does not always align with what ends up in the mug. Waitrose Essential Original Blend is a clear example of how an everyday item can lean heavily on image while delivering a result that sits squarely in the middle. Number 7. Yorkshire tea. A proper brew should hold its strength. Someone once told me, and for years I thought Yorkshire tea fitted that rule. I liked it enough to keep a box at home, then life shifted, habits changed, and I stopped reaching for it. Months went by without giving it a thought. When I finally picked it up again, expecting that familiar firmness, the cup that greeted me felt strangely distant. After coming back to it, the first signs were small but clear. The colour rose quickly, yet stopped at a muted brown. The aroma felt lighter than I remembered. The first sip carried the outline of strength, but not the body that used to follow. The taste thinned almost immediately, as if the depth had slipped through before it reached the tongue. The disappointment was not dramatic. It was simply the quiet realization that something once dependable now felt hollow. Yorkshire tea scored 70% in the August 2024, which blind test a result that confirms what many people sense in the cup. The blend still works, but it no longer carries the weight that built its reputation. As memories compare with reality, the mismatch becomes sharper. I found myself wondering how many others feel the same. How many people return to a familiar tea only to notice it had shifted in ways they couldn't quite explain. It is a feeling not unlike meeting an old friend after years apart and realizing the rhythm between you is no longer the same. Not bad, not wrong, just unfamiliar. Across recent remarks online, the pattern repeats. Drinkers mention fading strength. Others talk about needing 2 bags where one once did the job. Some describe boxes that brew darker than they taste, offering colour without solidity. These comments do not come from people looking for faults. They come from people who expected continuity and instead found inconsistency. The tone is often puzzled more than angry, which says a lot about how quietly the change is felt. Industry voices have noticed similar trends. A UK tea consultant quoted in Trade Analysis pointed out that many heritage blends depend more on recognition than formulation, and the pressure to maintain supply across millions of cups can stretch a recipe thin over time. It is not a scandal, just a consequence of scale meeting expectation. Yorkshire tea has occasionally spoken about improving consistency and refining blend control. When improvement is mentioned, the question becomes whether those efforts reach the mug in front of ordinary drinkers. Some batches taste closer to what people remember, others still fall short. That unevenness is what unsettles regulars more than anything else. Even so, there is room for hope. This is a brand with experience, resources, and years of loyalty behind it. A blend can drift, but it can also be steered back. Tea is a craft shaped by attention, and when attention returns, quality often follows. Even with the changes I felt in that Yorkshire cup, I still believe a blend can find its way back when the people behind it decide to steer it properly. Some teas slip, some recover, and some manage to hold their standard even when everything around them shifts. After looking at the brands that lost their footing, it is only fair to turn to the ones that still carry a steady cup. They are not perfect, and they do not need to be. What matters is that the character you expect is the character you actually meet. Number 8. Clippers Organic Everyday. Some teas hold their standard without noise, and Clippers Organic Everyday is one of them. It does not make big promises or lean on heritage. It simply presents itself as clean, traceable, and steady. Set within its category, that alone puts it ahead of many supermarket blends that depend heavily on branding rather than substance. Clipper's identity rests on certified organic sourcing, tighter leaf selection, and a blending process that avoids the rush common in large volume production. The company works with restrictions that force a certain level of discipline, Fewer pesticides allowed narrower supplier lists and stricter audit trails. Those constraints shape the cup long before water touches the bag. Clipper Organic. Everyday scored 76% in the August 2024, which blind test placing it among the highest performers in the group. The number matters because it reflects exactly what the brand claims to be reliable, honest and controlled. According to recent notes from UK trade analysts, organic blends tend to hold their flavour because the sourcing rules are tighter, and that observation fits what people taste here. Across multiple boxes, the consistency stands out. The leaves are cut evenly, the colour brews to a firm mid-brown, and the aroma stays clean without drifting into the dusty edge that appears in lower grade teas. When tasted, the blend holds a steady line strong enough to take milk without fading, mild enough to avoid bitterness, and balanced enough to drink twice a day without feeling heavy. Nothing about the cup tries to impress, yet nothing feels weak or hollow either. The strength of this consistency comes from the way the blend is built. Organic sourcing reduces dependence on broad commodity pools, narrowing the range of leaf variations. Smaller batch adjustments keep the flavour closer to a set target. A slower production rhythm avoids some of the shortcuts that come with speed. These choices do not create excitement, but they prevent many of the problems seen in the weaker supermarket. Tea's sudden dips in strength colour without body and boxes that differ noticeably from one another. Still, no product is without a downside. In everyday use, the most common criticism is its lighter body compared with some non-organic strong brews. People who expect a very forceful cup may find it a touch restrained. The price also reflects the organic certification, meaning it sits slightly higher than mainstream blends. These points do not undermine its performance, but they matter for drinkers who want heavy strength or the lowest possible cost. When placed against the broader market, Clipper Organic Everyday earns its place not by standing out dramatically, but by avoiding the pitfalls that drag others down. The tea does what it says it will do, and it does so repeatedly. For drinkers who want a cup that behaves the same on a Monday morning as it does on a Sunday afternoon, this reliability is the main reason it passes the test. Number 9. Pukka Elegant Earl Grey. Clipper earns its place through steadiness, but Pukka's Elegant Earl Grey stands out for a different reason. Its identity is built directly on where its leaves come from and how they are handled. The company's origins as a UK organic and herbal tea maker shape every decision behind this blend. It works with certified organic farms across India, Sri Lanka, and East Africa, using narrower supplier lists and stricter documentation than most supermarket brands. These sourcing rules act as a filter, setting the tea on firmer ground before it even reaches a blending room. The achievement attached to it is clear. Pukka Elegant Earl Grey scored 71% in the August 2024, which blind test placing it above the bulk of everyday teas and near the top of the specialty group. It has also gathered steady recognition in UK food reporting for clean formulation and predictable quality. None of this comes from hype. It comes from a process that is intentionally tight and consistent. Set against its higher price, the tea makes its case through transparency. Organic certification adds cost. Fair trade participation adds cost. Smaller, more controlled sourcing adds cost. Pukka sits above mainstream supermarket blends because it cannot lean on the shortcuts that cheaper brands rely on. For some drinkers, that premium is justified. For others, it is a barrier. What matters is that the price aligns with the production method rather than a branding strategy. According to broad reviews from UK shoppers, the flavour profile is one of its strongest points. Many mention the bergamot as firm but clean, without the chemical sharpness found in lower-cost Earl Grey teas. Others note that boxes behave consistently, avoiding the batch-to-batch variations common in mass-market blends. Some describe it as precise enough to drink without milk, which is not always the case with Earl Grey at this price level. The recurring theme is reliability. People know what flavour they will get when they open a new box. Still, the blend is not without weaknesses. Some drinkers who prefer a strong, heavy brew find it too light for milk-forward use. Others say the bergamot edge can turn sharp if brewed too long. and the price premium means it is not the kind of tea many will drink 3 times a day. These points do not undermine its strengths. They simply show where expectations differ depending on taste and budget. When tasted plainly, the tea presents itself without confusion. The colour is lighter than a standard black blend. The aroma carries a direct citrus line. The taste is controlled slightly lifted and shaped more by clarity than weight. Nothing feels muddy or overhandled. The cup reflects the discipline behind its sourcing as much as the recipe itself. Across the premium shelf, Pukka Elegant Earl Grey earns its place because it behaves exactly as it claims to: organic, consistent, and clearly defined. It does not rely on heritage or theatrics. It performs through origin integrity and steady craftsmanship, which is why it passes where others fall short. After looking at these blends side by side, the pattern is clearer than ever. The name on the box does not guarantee the cup you get. Some teas drift because their processes tighten, others fall behind because they chase price over balance, and a few manage to hold their ground by keeping their sourcing honest and their blending steady. What matters now is not the logo, the nostalgia, or the marketing line. It is whether the brew in front of you still feels true to what it claims. If there is one takeaway, it is this: trust should be earned repeatedly. The good news is that the British tea shelf still has dependable options as long as you choose with intention. Keep your expectations firm, your standards clear, and your choices deliberate. A better cup is never far away when you know what to look for.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.